Okay, so we're going to start off with SharePoint lists, and I think the easiest way to think of SharePoint lists is you can compare them directly to database tables. They're very, very similar. And with SharePoint 2010, the lists performance has been increased drastically, and the functionality that you get with lists. So they actually become a real option for building data applications on. Whereas in MOS, as some of you guys would have probably seen, you very quickly got caught by the limitations of lists, and that's sort of fallen away greatly. And each of these points are really, what the pros of using these technologies, but database tables certainly aren't dead. It's not. I don't want anybody thinking that you don't use databases anymore, because that's just not true. Okay, so in SharePoint lists, you obviously get all your SharePoint security and permissions built in, which is really nice. So you don't, you've got workflow. You can attach it, and it's pretty native to SharePoint, so it's a good advantage. You get versioning in, and obviously in traditional SQL tables, you'd have to go and put in tomb tables or a history table, and you'd have to put a trigger on, and you get locking issues. And it's not that it can't be done, it's just the overhead that you have to go and take and hit yourself for something that you want to have the versioning on. Whereas in SharePoint, it's built in, out the box, you go. Obviously, your Office integration, your clients, some of my clients are construction companies, and the guys who work down there, you don't want to be giving them anything new, so you've got your nice integration to Excel, Word, PowerPoint. Use it, you've got your users, and they're partial to these products. If you can keep them in those environments, often they're very happy, and you get much better user acceptance. So that's really a plus to SharePoint if you think about it. Obviously, even specifically we're looking at lists, and you've got easy setup. You can create lists. You don't need any special technical knowledge to go and create lists. It's not like a database where you have to know transaction SQL or load the tools and get all into it. Your users can actually dictate your lists if you're brave enough to do that. I don't know if I am, but And obviously SharePoint generates your UI, which, okay, you get a lot of tools, and what is Lightbox is coming out now. It is Lightbox, isn't it? It is Lightbox, isn't it? Yeah. Which generates a lot of this for you, and you can generate off tables, and it'll give you your various layers. That have a look at Lightbox. Actually, that's probably the best. LightSwitch. That's it. It's not Lightbox. So have a look at that. And it does generate your UI, but saying that if you now go and put up lists or connect to external data, it gives you all your back-end lists, so it can actually save you a lot of time. Instead of you're now building a product, you get all your back-end screens, instead of you going to a developer and saying, can you go and load some data for me, or build me a screen, and it can actually, so you can get your products to market and get your stuff out a lot quicker using SharePoint as your actual base platform. And especially with sandbox solutions, you reduce your risk. You don't have to go and get infrastructure every time. So, at the moment, you guys are building, a lot of guys are building, I'm not talking about now traditional .NET developers. You need to actually pretty much go and get a segregated environment to go and get your code out. Now you've got these sandbox solutions in SharePoint 2010. If it goes down, not ideal, but you know what, it goes down in isolation. So your developers, you don't have to do as much testing. I'm not suggesting for a second don't do testing, but it's very helpful if you've got this infrastructure already set up. You go and build this application in the sandbox area. You guys all know what sandboxes are in SharePoint? Cool. Okay, so it's a big advantage. You can actually save a lot of development time if you're trying to build for a company. So now I'm going to look at the database tables and what they have. And the biggest problem for me, why I don't like SharePoint lists still, is you don't get transactions. So the typical example is a banking application. You want to pull money out of one account and you want to deposit it into another account. Okay. You can't do that in SharePoint lists. Well, you can, but you've got to do them as individual transactions. And you could sort of write some sort of workflow to check it, but it would be very heavy. Whereas you guys know in .NET and transaction SQL, you can go and write these transactions, and if it fails halfway through, it rolls back to its initial state. Okay, in a banking example, you're talking about 2 records that you're inserting. A lot of transactions we do don't involve two records, and then it becomes very powerful. So you've got to decide what you want to use, whether you want to use a database table. And there's no reason why you can't use database tables from within SharePoint. You've got ADO.NET, you've got all the tools you've got, nothing's being taken away from you. It's just sometimes you're going to be better off putting things into SharePoint lists. Performance. You're not going to get the performance out of SharePoint lists that you get out of database tables. It's impossible. You want to do heavy stuff, and your key applications to stick to databases. That's what you want to do. But saying that SharePoint lists have been improved so much, working with 1 million items in the list is not impossible, and the same rules apply. Don't go and show 1 million items on a page. That's not SharePoint. That's common sense, really. But what's actually happening is SharePoint lists are becoming a better storage mechanism than was previously possible. But if you do have high volume stuff and you're doing stuff, I know a lot of you guys work in insurance and banking. your core applications, you're not going to be storing it in SharePoint. You still need to do it in databases. But you can obviously surface that data through SharePoint. So you can build KPIs. You can surface them in various ways. So they're complementary. You've just got to decide the right point. And you'll as we go through this, I'm sure if you do these kind of decisions, it sort of will all come together. The other advantage that database tables has is obviously when you want to slice and dice. Is that a term that you guys are aware of when I say slice and dice? It's good having technical guys, because no matter where you are in the world, people know that sort of. So you want to slice and dice data, you want to be using databases, you don't want to be using SharePoint. You can use BI, but there's no reason why you can't use the BI from SharePoint on SQL or whatever you want to use. So if you're building something that requires greater flexibility, you've got a lot of many-to-many relationships, complex relationships. You generally are going to want to be using databases still. So I think you guys are getting the feeling for this. If you've got 50 tables, you don't want to be using SharePoint. If you've got 7 tables, normal, good ERD design, you can quite easily get away with it in SharePoint lists. Okay, so it's really the size that dictates and the amount of performance you need. And then I suppose the big advantage to database tables is, we might be SharePoint guys and we love SharePoint, but a lot of the developers come in and they just don't trust them. And it just takes that 3 months to just say, or a month to just say, listen, this is what we're doing, you've got to do it. And then you stop trusting them and you're like, geez, this is a great storage mechanism, I can see everything working. It's easier, or not easier, it's just that you pick it at the right time. So it's very hard for a lot of, any of you guys here just playing .NET developers and haven't actually really got into SharePoint at all? Okay, yeah, and you'll get to trust it and you'll look for tables, you just find the maintenance of it a lot easier, but it is a big jump for you. For me, when I did it in Moss, I was like, no, I use tables for my storage. That's just who I was. So.
Just so I want to ask you, do SharePoint lists cover hierarchical data?
Yes, in SharePoint 2010 you can set up referential integrity, so like you do in a SQL database. You can do cascade deletes, and we actually have a look at that in the demonstrations. So that's actually the real reason why you can actually start building applications now. In Moss, as some of you guys will be aware of, setting up hierarchical data and then moving it through various environments. You have to do feature receivers. I'm probably going on a path I shouldn't be going on here. But it was nasty, and anybody, I can see you guys nodding. Yeah, it was horrible. It's not like that anymore. Now it's like SQL, but even easier because you get a web UI on everything. So you can actually go and set this up. And the other thing you can obviously do is reverse engineer any lists you make. So if you do have users who create lists and you then want to go and pass them through environments, you can reverse engineer them out into procedural code. I've got a post on my blog. Sorry, I'm going a bit off topic here. And you can reverse engineer out how you created these lists. And then, so for instance, what's quite common is in the British government, you go through like 8 environments to get into production. So you want to make this stuff like auto push out all the time. You just want to activate your features and have it going. But now in most companies are more realistic and they'll actually sort of let you occasionally use the UI. But the British government's the worst one that I've ever seen. They wouldn't let anybody onto any machine for any reason. So you just had to do it that way. But, okay.
When you use output